We will proceed with Representative Jordan's bill. Would you like to move your bill?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I move that House File 3200 be laid over.
Representative Jordan moves that House File 3200 be laid over. I believe you have a DE1.
I do, Mr. Chair, and I move that amendment. And as a bit of an explanation, it is the vast majority of this amendment is technical. Some highlights include a ramp up on rates to ease retailers and consumers into the program. It makes the program optional for retailers to operate a redemption site. It removed cartons and pouches from the program and added a refund value for MRFs. As for member support on the amendment.
Any questions to the DE1 amendment? Members, any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. DE1 is adopted. Representative Jordan to House File 3200 as amended.
Thank you, Chair Hansen. As members know, we discussed Minnesota's waste problem extensively yesterday. And a big part of that is our beverage containers that we lose to roadways, waterways, and landfills and trash incinerators. The Container Recycling Institute estimates that each year 3.8 billion beverage containers sold in Minnesota that are collectively worth $47.2 million are put in landfills or burned. That is over 660 beverage containers that are littered per Minnesotan. And this problem exists because our current recycling system is not working well enough. The Recycling Partnership's 2024 State of Recycling Report says that Minnesota has a 20% recycling rate, and it also finds that 30% of Minnesotans have zero access to recycling in our state. Even if curbside recycling is improved, it doesn't address the 1/3 of beverage containers that are consumed on the go. This bill was introduced so Minnesota can implement an environmental policy that is proven in the United States and around the world that consistently achieves significantly higher beverage container recycling rates. And this is in the form of recycling refunds. In a recycling refund system, consumers buy the beverage and borrow the container. They pay a small refundable deposit for each beverage container they purchase and receive that deposit back upon returning the container at a convenient redemption location. The results are proven. Beverage containers sold with a deposit in 10 states that have these programs are recycled at 2 to 3 times the rate as beverage containers sold without a deposit around the country. In a modern recycling refund system, across the more than 40 countries that have one, several of them consistently achieve greater than 90% redemption rates. And we should bring this to Minnesota. If we did, the Container Recycling Institute has found that with an 80% redemption rate and an additional 5% of beverage containers recycled via the curbside system, nearly 200,000 tons of material would now get recycled annually, which would lead to greenhouse gas emissions savings equivalent to taking more than 53,000 cars off the road for an entire year. The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency has an analysis determining that a recycling refund system would create a net gain of over 1,000 jobs. And we can get these environmental and economic impacts without raising taxes. The ultimate responsibility for managing and financing the program would be on distributors and importers of beverages into the state, with all revenue created by the program going towards operating it. There are also provisions in the bill to minimize any potential burdens on material recovery facilities, or MRFs, and retailers. With the recycling refund program, our state could protect the environment and stimulate the economy by having many more beverage containers recycled rather than littered, landfilled, or burned. With that, I would like to turn to testimony, Mr. Chair. I understand there's quite a bit.
And Representative Jordan and members in the audience, because we took a little longer, we're going to have to cut the testimony to 1.5 minutes.
1 minute.
A minute.
Yeah, 1 minute.
1 minute instead of 2 minutes. So, Kate Bailey, Association of Plastic Recyclers. Unless Representative Heinzman, you want to go to 5?
Yeah.
Kate Bailey, Association of Plastic Recyclers.
Good afternoon, Chair Hansman and committee members. You heard from me yesterday. I represent the Association of Plastic Recyclers. We are here in support of a better recycling system. This in tandem of the bill that we heard yesterday. I want to talk today about this bill, about the supply chain. So our role as recyclers is not to manage waste. We actually collect and process materials and then sell them back to manufacturers. So we are part of the feedstock for U.S. manufacturing. Companies have committed to using more recycled plastics and are required by law to use more recycled plastics. We cannot get enough recycled water bottles and soda bottles to meet U.S. demand for the manufacturing for those recycled plastics. We have members importing plastics from other countries to meet this demand. Meanwhile, we are literally throwing those bottles away, littering them in the streets or waterways of Minnesota. So this bill is an opportunity to clean up that litter, improve recycling, and support U.S. domestic manufacturing. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicholas Hartsey, Teamsters Local 792.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Nicholas Hartsey, and I'm a business agent with Teamsters Local 792, also a trustee on the board. I've worked in the beverage industry for 12 years for the company PepsiCo. 2,000 Teamsters produce and distribute products that are affected by this bill every day, from beer, pop, and everything in between. We recognize the importance of recycling and definitely support the efforts to increase recycling rates. However, we have serious concerns about how this bill would affect our industry and our union jobs. This bill will pass the cost of the tax to the consumer, and it remains unclear if it will increase recycling rates that are already in the top 10 of the nation. For example, a case of beer will cost $2.40 more. That increase in cost to consumers will reduce demand for bottled beverages, including pops, sport drinks, and beer. A reduction in demand could lead to the loss of good union jobs across the state. Additionally, a bill like this adds strain to our retail partners, adding burden to small businesses that are already fighting hard to make ends meet. This bill doesn't hurt big businesses, large corporations, and their executives. It hurts mom and pop shops, the backbones of Main Street workers who with union jobs provide them security. Finally, it punishes people who are already recycling and doing the right thing, making those who already recycle pay more upfront for the products they like and burden them to clean, store, bag, and transport to a collection site. We should be making it easier for people to recycle, not harder. Thank you for all your time and attention. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Scott Breen, Can Manufacturers Institute.
Mr. Chair and members, good afternoon. I'm Scott Breen of Can Manufacturers Institute, or CMI. We represent U.S. metal can makers and their suppliers. Our members have several facilities in Minnesota, including Crown's Beverage Can Manufacturing Plant in Mankato. There's a letter of support in the record from Ryan Holla, the plant manager there. CMI supports House File 3200 because we need more used cans to make new cans. More cans recycled means making cans with less carbon and with less virgin aluminum, which is carbon intensive and imported. We'd much rather have a larger, consistent, high-quality domestic supply of material to make new cans. The U.S. manufactured can averages 73% recycled content. We can only get that higher if there's a greater supply of recycled material. The same goes for the plastic and glass industry. There's only one proven solution to get beverage container recycling consistently above 90%. That's recycling refunds. And it's popular in the 10 states that currently have it. Over 90% of voters there said they support it. And nationally, the support was above 70%, regardless of party affiliation. This bill will create a modern system that has provisions to address concerns around consumer convenience, making recycling sortation facilities whole, and being curbside compatible. I was reminded in the past 24 hours of the impact of this bill. I saw cans in the garbage in the Department of Transportation cafeteria, even with a recycling bin right next to it. I was running this morning along Minnesota Street, Wabasha Street Bridge, picking up cans and bottles, putting them in the recycling bins there. But these examples demonstrate that simply providing recycling access isn't enough for beverage containers. We need this financial incentive. It works, and Minnesota can be a leader in creating a modern recycling refund system, thereby cleaning up its streets, creating jobs, and keeping valuable materials in domestic manufacturing rather than Minnesota landfills and natural areas. Thank you.
Next up, Tony Quillis, Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. On deck, Lucy Mullaney, Eureka Recycling, and then Tim Wilkins. Mr. Quillis.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Tony Quillis. I'm the Director of Environmental Policy at the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. As I mentioned yesterday, Minnesota is one of the leading states in recycling. One of them that we're really good at is aluminum, because of our majority of our citizens have access to curbside recycling. I mentioned the solid waste tax yesterday. This would be another tax on top of that, starting at 5 cents, then moving up to 10 cents in 2030, along with the ability to be increased by the commissioner. So besides the cost concerns, Mr. Chairman and members, it's how the implementation of this program would work within the existing system. I think it'd be a struggle for the hospitality industry, but also public institutions, including sporting venues, public parks, hospitals, and schools. Also multifamily residences. Second concern also is how the non-redeemable containers, whether they're crushed or damaged, and how those would be treated, and also how the collection sites and mobile units would be working that are mentioned in the bill, Mr. Chairman, within the existing system. I think that the education component is important. I cannot go without mentioning Minnesota Wastewise, and then also the Carver, Dakota, Hennepin, Ramsey, and Washington County Recycling Exists program. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Lucy Mullaney, Eureka Recycling, then Tim Wilkin, and then Dylan De Thomas.
Thank you, Chair Hansen, members of the committee, and Rep. Jordan for her commitment to this issue. I'm Lucy Mullaney. I'm the Director of Policy with Eureka Recycling, and I'm here today as a MRF operator. We are an operator of a material recovery facility, a MRF, and I want to address specific concerns around the impact a recycling refund program will have on MRFs. So while MRFs will see beverage containers coming through the curbside program, we know that some residents will still recycle in the curbside, just as they do in bottle bill states. And this bill addresses concerns about MRFs losing some of the most valuable materials to redemption centers by compensating MRFs a processing fee for beverage containers that come through our curbside program. This processing fee is based on 80% of the refund value. Based on our own internal economic modeling, which tested out different scenarios and similar modeling done by our partners, the processing fee more than makes up the difference for the containers lost to redemption centers and far exceeds the amount MRFs are currently receiving in the marketplace. Not only does this help MRFs, but it also allows for increased financial support to local communities through established revenue shares. It provides the financial support to pay for the MRF upgrades, and it ensures we have a guaranteed market for beverage containers. Representative Jordan has taken a very thoughtful approach to this bill, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Tim Wilkin, Minnesota Beverage Association, then Dylan De Thomas, the Recycling Partnership, and then Joel Carlson. Mr. Wilkin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. I'm Tim Wilkin. I'm president of the Minnesota Beverage Association, the makers and distributors of non-alcoholic beverages in the state. Recycling and recyclability has been a long-time priority for our members, and we've prioritized making our packaging 100% recyclable. We encourage you, instead of this bill, to look at dedicating the solid waste tax, 100% of the solid waste tax, to the original purpose, to managing solid waste and improving our recycling infrastructure and creating sustainable consumer education. Currently, 27% of this tax is going to the general fund. I'm here today with a group of business, agricultural, and labor groups in opposition to this bill. We have successfully created a system in Minnesota that ranks among the best in the nation. We created a system that is successful at all materials, not just a select few, and we do better at all materials than do bottle bill states. This will hurt consumers by increasing the price due to not only the deposit, but also the tax that's built in and hidden from the system. And it's also, consumers have to take the sticky empties, and it's kind of a gross system. I lived under this in college in Iowa, so I encourage you to vote no. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Dylan De Thomas, the Recycling Partnership, then Joel Carlson, and then Jennifer DeJournette.
Thank you, Chair Hansen, members of the committee, and Representative Jordan for your commitment to this issue. For the record, my name is Dylan De Thomas, and I represent the Recycling Partnership, and I'm testifying in support of House File 3200, especially when paired with the EPR bill that we talked about yesterday. I lead state policy work for the Recycling Partnership. We're funded by big companies and packaging manufacturers to help support their sustainability goals, which I'm happy to go into. We talked about that yesterday as well. We talked about the EPR component of how to address the solid waste crisis here in Minnesota. DRS is a kind of EPR that, with well-designed, can have an incredible impact on improving recycling rates, achieving beverage container recycling rates more than 80%, while in states that don't have it are around 30%. It's also preferred as a way to get at the reuse and refill goals that are in that EPR bill. You can't do it without a system like this, in particular for materials like glass. We know that well-designed and implemented EPR and DRS system programs in tandem can bring great environmental and economic benefits. These programs will create and maintain jobs across the state. Thank you for including me in this hearing.
Joel Carlson, Minnesota Wine and Spirit Wholesalers, Jennifer DeJornet after that, and then Brant Irwin.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm Joel Carlson. I own a legal research and government affairs business here in St. Paul, and I represent the Minnesota Wine and Spirit Wholesalers Association. I'm not going to let you tap your gavel. Our Minnesota-based members, all family-owned, distribute between 75 and 80% of the wine and spirits in the state of Minnesota. We have great concerns about this bill, and I'll just say this. All those nickels and dimes that get refunded come directly from our clients. It's millions for us, and it is a significant problem for the benefit that we think we'll get. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Jennifer DeJornet, Clean Water Action, then Brant Irwin, and then Kurt Kadelka.
Good evening, Chair Hansen and members of the committee. I am speaking on behalf of Ivana Stark, State Director of Clean Water Action. She was supposed to be here today, but unfortunately fell down the stairs. I'm here today to testify in support of House File 3200. Yesterday, you heard about the dangers of plastics and microplastics they pose to human health. Plastic bottle waste are just another contributor to the growing plastic waste problem we have. When pop was first bottled in the beginning of the 20th century, it cost 5 cents and deposits were 2 cents. 40% of the cost of pop was the deposit. A survey conducted in the 20s concluded that 80% of the bottlers had a deposit system. The reclamation system worked because bottles were kept out of the waste stream. Unfortunately, we have backslid, and the bottles that are being kept that aren't being recycled are being put into our landfills where they're piling up and this waste is grown. Around the 1960s, alarm over the waste and pollution began to emerge. Rather than being proactive in our efforts along the way, we shifted the responsibility to consumers versus focusing on partnering with industry and producing the producers of the product in the first place. Collaboration and waste reduction should have always been our focus. Currently, the 10 states that have bottle bills have high reclamation rates of 70 to 85%, and Americans, 50 billion of the bottles per year are being taken care of. So thank you very much, and we ask you to support this bill.
If you could just state your name for the record.
Oh, Jennifer DeJorna, thank you.
Brant Irwin, Minnesota Beer Wholesalers Association, then Kurt Kadelka, and then Tony Chesek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Brant Irwin. I'm the president of the Minnesota Beer Wholesalers Association. We are the trade association, family-owned distributors, primarily malt beverages, that employ thousands of Minnesotans throughout the state. I am here to provide testimony in opposition to House File 3200. This bill would obligate every wholesaler and importer in the state to join a distributor and importer responsibility organization. It's important to note that the language of the bill includes those breweries and farm wineries that self-distribute, who would also be considered wholesalers under the bill and be obligated to join this group. The legislation as proposed is not adding on to the existing recycling infrastructure in place. Instead, it's circumventing the existing system and creating a new system to be operated by businesses that don't have the infrastructure in place to do so. The obligations being passed on to that new organization under this bill are currently being performed by waste and trash haulers and recycling companies, each of whom is in fact designed for these specific purposes. As already identified, Minnesota ranks in the top 10 in recycling rates of common containers and packaging materials. I ask you to please not disrupt a system that's working very well. Thank you.
Kurt Kadelka, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, then Tony Chesek, and then Bruce Newstead.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. My name, for the record, is Kurt Kadelka with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. We talked yesterday really quickly about the 5.9 million ton waste problem we have here in Minnesota. And we wanted to remind you that the legislature set out some aggressive goals, including 75% recycling in the metropolitan area. However, even with a greater opportunities to recycle beverage containers than others and a wide public understanding that cans and beverage containers are recyclable, we're not hitting the 75%. In fact, for aluminum cans, for instance, we're only at 57%. Why does this matter? Well, there are environmental impacts as a result of this. One example is it takes 90% more energy to produce an aluminum can from virgin imported ore compared to recycled materials. Aluminum is also very valuable, and every time we throw one can into the landfill, we're throwing away money. Beverage container refund programs have proven effective across this nation and also the globe. And it is also a platform that we can build on reusable and refillable container systems that will have greater environmental benefits. It's an area we'd like to continue to work with the proposers on. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members.
Tony Chesick, Minnesota Licensed Beverage Association, then Bruce Newstead, and then Jill Sims.
Thank you, Chair Hansen and committee. First off, I want to thank Representative Jordan for the DE amendment. We really appreciate that. The majority of our industries already operate on single-digit profit margins. This bill will increase costs at all levels of manufacturing, distributing, and retailing when the cost of goods and services are seemingly outpacing current market profitability. If a bar or restaurant wants to recoup the increased costs incurred, they will then have to store these containers that both pose an increased foot traffic for those looking to cash in on those unattended containers outside and pose a myriad of health risks and violations if they are to be stored indoors where space and accessibility are in question. For clarification, on-premise liquor license holders who are bars, restaurants, tap rooms, and brew pubs oftentimes absorb the cost of such cost increases. Only when it is financially out of scope do retailers pass these costs along to their beloved customers. The cost of wholesaling, with the cost of wholesalers joining an association, pivoting on current business models and causing disruption in the system, retail will be forced to raise costs to those who are already strapped. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Bruce Newstead, Minnesota Retailers Association, Jill Sims, Hospitality Minnesota, and Jamie Fuel, President of the Grocers Association.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Bruce Newstead with the Minnesota Retailers Association. We're a trade group of about 1,200 stores across Minnesota, including Main Street businesses and some of the national brands that you're familiar with. I'm here to express our opposition to House File 3200, but I first want to flag, as Mr. Chesick did, a part of the bill that we appreciate. And we appreciate the delete all and how Reverend Jordan made accommodations for retailers relative to their voluntary participation versus mandatory participation based on experiences in other states. We know that's an important part of this bill, so thank you. Even with that provision, we're concerned that the bill will have negative impacts on consumers across Minnesota. The bill will create higher costs for Minnesotans, including seniors and low-income individuals who will bear the costs of those increases and really will have to pay more products for the more price for the products that they enjoy and rely on today. Retailers, as you've heard, will also face competitive challenges, particularly in border communities. In these communities where it's easy to kind of slide across the river, like my hometown of Winona, Minnesota, or go across the street or the highway, higher prices will result in consumers making purchases in other states, sending those dollars elsewhere, and impacting their other purchases, including the rest of the market basket. You've also heard how it'll be an inconvenience for consumers. So, Mr. Chair, I just want to end and thank you for your time today. We appreciate the opportunity to comment on this bill.
Jill Sims, Hospitality Minnesota, Jamie Fuel, and then David Ring.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Jill Sims, and I'm the Director of Government Relations at Hospitality Minnesota. We are opposed and concerned about the many difficult challenges this bill will place on the hospitality industry, specifically our restaurants, breweries, and wineries. This bill increases costs for hospitality operators, hurts competitiveness of our small businesses, and complicates health and safety and regulatory compliance. Please consider the impact it has to our small businesses who produce and distribute in Minnesota. This bill does not account for the strict regulations around the labeling of our beverage products and significant financial cost to change a label or to reprint cans. To put things into perspective, something that may seem as small as making a label change can cost upwards of $5,000 per brand, not just per business. So if you have 12 styles of beer, that's $60,000. Not to mention, businesses typically buy in extreme bulk quantities and have 6 to 12 months on hand. Sorry, had to cut my testimony. An additional challenge for our small businesses is the financial obligation to the organization as well. It's a little bit ambiguous, and right now that doesn't allow for our businesses to financially plan, and we are on razor-thin margins. Every day, more and more is placed on the operators' plates in businesses across Minnesota. We're still financially strained and recovering, so we cannot shoulder this burden, and we ask that you oppose. Thank you.
Jamie Fuel. President of the Minnesota Grocers Association, then David Ring.
Chair Hansen, members of the committee, thank you. I am Jamie Poole, President of the Minnesota Grocers Association, and we're here to express our concerns with House File 3200. As an industry, we take our role as an environment steward serious. I'm going to talk a little bit about the functionality and our concerns there. You're asking us to take on additional roles within the community. We're not waste haulers. Food safety and cleanliness is a top priority of being a responsible food retailer. If grocery and convenience stores are not sanitary, the consequences could be deadly. Our members that operate in other states shared that customers do bring in very unsanitary containers. We also know this from our bag take-back programs. They attract pests from rodents to ants. Because of the Midwestern climate, these take-back centers are customarily located within the store very close to food products. The bill does allow for retailers to opt in and opt out. For locations that have redemption centers, they'll need additional staffing to operate the machines and troubleshoot. Pest control measures, none of these expenses are reimbursable to the retailer. Also, we are not a financial collection. Okay, I'm sorry, but I just want to say that interchange fees on all of this will be also charged, so retailers have to pick up those costs. So there's a lot that goes into this bill. Thank you.
David Ring, Quick Trip.
Quick Trip, 2 minutes. Try to be brief. I know we're coming up against the 4:30 hour. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair Jordan, members of the committee. My name is Dave Ring. I'm the Community Government Relations Manager for Quick Trip. We own and operate 870 stores in 6 states, including 213 here in Minnesota, where we employ over 8,700 people. We take recycling very seriously. We have recycling containers at all of our stores in Minnesota, and annually at all of our 870 stores, we recycle over 13,700 tons of cardboard and over 27,700 tons of mixed recycling, that being aluminum, plastic, and glass beverage containers. Well, the recycling initiatives in the recently revised HF 3200 are voluntary, which we appreciate. Quick Trip is opposed to this legislation for the following reasons. Minnesota's recycling rate stands at 49%, which ranks 7th in the country, which shows that curbside recycling, the efforts of retailers like our company and others, and well-developed recycling programs in Minnesota are working. They may not be perfect, and there may be work to do, but we are outpacing many other states, including several that already have mandatory bottle container legislation in place. Implementing a bottle container law, voluntary or not, appears to only address 3% of the waste stream. We would encourage the committee to vote against this and commit the solid waste tax for its intended purpose. Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak for or against the bill? Anyone else in the audience? So we have Representative Gilman first, and then Representative Jacob.
Thank you, Chair. So quick question for the author of the bill. So how will this program work in greater Minnesota? Like how many redemption sites? And how would that work in sparsely populated areas?
Representative Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are convenience factors that are put into the bill that the DERO would be administering, and there would be people on the DERO who would be from both greater Minnesota and the metro area. There are convenience standards that would be enforced and created, and those would be enforced by the program itself. So that would be determined there.
Representative Gilman.
Okay. And then again, so then do you have also in the bill just a ballpark idea of what it would cost to operate the redemption sites, mobile centers, and kiosks?
Representative Jordan.
Mr. Chair, Representative Gilman, those would be determined by the DERO, and that would be part of the fees that the importers would be paying, and they would also be factored into the sites would be paid for by the beverage distributors and the people who are paying into it, and as part of the unredeemed deposits. I don't have an estimate on how much each individual redemption site would be. I don't know, perhaps Mr. Breen might be able to better discuss how much they cost in other states.
Yes, thank you. So it'll vary by the type of redemption site. So we keep it very flexible in the bill because we wanted this DERO to be able to operate the right system in the right place and to not have too many of them. So you were asking about how many sites. If we put in the bill there needs to be X sites in every county, there could be some counties that have too many or too little. So we wanted to have a convenience standard established, and then the right amount of redemption sites and the right kind of redemption sites will be put in place to meet that convenience standard and to meet the performance targets. In terms of the overall cost, there was an MPCA study that said that this could cost overall a couple $100 million, but then the money would come from the unredeemed refunds as well as the sale of the containers that are redeemed, as well as the fee to the distributors and importers.
Representative Gilman?
So that sounds very expensive. And so
Yes.
that's a big concern. Thanks.
Representative Jacob?
Thank you, Chair Hansen, Representative Jordan. So coming in from county government, Winona County has what I would consider to be a very high-functioning recycling program. We have carts at every single residence throughout the rural area and throughout the county. Part of the way that we were able to get people to warm up to this idea was the no-sort recycling. So now we're going back away from no-sort recycling into sorting out this particular stream. And more importantly, the economy of scale of driving just one truck around these entire greater Minnesota rural areas rather than having 10 competing trucks competing for garbage. So I'm wondering specifically, do you have any data on the carbon footprint that's going to be added back into the environment when we have people in the rural areas bringing these items in individually rather than the way we do it now with picking all this up in just one stop?
Representative Jordan?
Mr. Chair, Representative, the idea of this is that you would be able to combine trips. So if you're going into town to buy pop, you can bring back your empty pop cans. So it wouldn't be replacing an extra trip. And to the point about this single sort, you could still continue to put your your cans and bottles into your blue bin or whatever color bin. Is it blue in Winona County?
Blue bins, yeah.
Blue bin there too. You could still put your cans in or bottles in the blue bin, and those county haulers would still be able to pick them up.
One follow-up question. Yeah. So again, the highest value, so I've toured these MRF facilities and they do just an excellent job, and exactly what you want to see done with the recycling is being done. So you take out the most valuable pieces from the county, the aluminum and the plastic bottles. Will you have a way to reimburse the counties for the money that you're taking from their programs?
Representative Jordan?
Mr. Chair, Representative, there would be, I think it would be better if we had someone from the MRFs to speak to it, so I would ask Lucy Milani to come back up and talk about how that would work.
Delaney could. Just a reminder that this bill is being laid over.
Thank you. We've worked closely on the language. MRFs would receive a reimbursement for the beverage containers that they're still processing. And the reimbursement would be based on a percentage of the refund value. So the language has it at 80% of the refund value, which is considerably more than what we're receiving per PET bottle or per aluminum can in the current marketplace.
Yeah, one more follow-up question. So we spent an exorbitant amount of time negotiating contracts with different recycling companies. So again, you're taking out the valuable part of the recycling stream. So we're actually charging taxpayers per parcel presently. So that's going to upset that too. So do you have a way to reimburse the taxpayer for the obvious disparity in the equation that's going to take place from this?
So are you talking about, consumers are able to receive their deposit back if they return it at a redemption center. If they recycle it in their bin, MRFs are receiving a percentage of that refund, which would continue to go towards the way that we pay counties and cities now through revenue share. Yeah.
Well, my fear is this will dismantle a really good system.
Representative Finke, and then just a reminder, the bill over.
Thank you, Chair Hansen and Representative. First I just want to say how wonderful and proud I am to hear so many people who are so excited about recycling. I didn't know literally every interest was already meeting all of our recycling goals. I also love to hear all the concern about our carbon footprints and making sure that we are fighting the climate fight. Everyone seems to be highly committed to this, so that's really great to hear. Representative Jordan, all of that being said, we have a just enormous waste problem, and everybody can attest to the failure of recycling. right? Being 7th in the nation, in a nation that is terrible at recycling, is very little to be proud of, in my opinion. So how would this bill, just like yesterday, is this bill going to help us with our waste stream problem? And how is it going to help our health, all of the things that we heard yesterday? Are we still attacking the same problem?
Representative Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Finke. And this will also serve as my closing comments for the bill. Minnesota does have a waste problem, and what we do not recycle, we either put in a landfill or we burn. When we burn it, it goes into our air and into our lungs. When it goes into a landfill, that waste breaks down and goes into our soil and water, and the air and the water and the soil go into us. We are, according to Ball, only 55% of cans in Minnesota are recycled into new ones. And so all the rest are burned or put in landfills. And so we need to tackle that problem. This bill is a way to do it. This is a bill that is supported by consumer advocates, and it's supported by people who are actually doing this recycling and need to make sure that we're doing something about our health. I'll remind people about the statistic that I've been thinking about for the last 24 hours, that on average we consume a credit card's worth of plastic each week. That should be pretty sobering. I think finding microplastics in our blood, in semen, in cord blood, in breast milk should be something that concerns us all, as should the proliferation of waste and the growth that will be happening if we do nothing to stop it. This bill will do something to stop it and make sure that we are also supporting our small businesses who need these products. And with that, Mr. Chair, I renew my motion to lay the bill over.
Representative Jordan renews her motion that House File 3200 as amended be laid over. The bill is laid over.